Okay, today we are going to install a sound decoder into a Kato PB-1. This is the shell for the PB-1. I've already sent this in to be the frame to be milled, and so it's pretty much ready to go now. This is the frame as it comes back in this little plastic bag. I'll just open that up after disposing of the staple in the garbage. Okay, oh look, I got a little polishing pellet in there too. Well, that goes in the garbage as well. Plastic bag goes away. So in the milling process, what happens is there's a hole milled here for the capacitor, and there's a hole milled in here for the speaker. So our goal today is to get this on top of this. Now what I do is I have a little plastic box here, and I bought this plastic box to keep all the parts in, as I had the frame sent out to Aztec for milling. So I've got the motor and components and the trucks in here, and these are the, seeing as this is a PB1, this is the old board for it, which really does nothing. Here's the board that was in the pb1 unit that I did earlier. I'm going to do something a little different with this PB1. I'm going to put lights in both ends, and I'm not sure how I'll configure them yet, but I just tried this shell on my PA1 before putting that shell on, and I like the light. It shines through the door here, and it shines through the little tiny windows here. So I figure if I put them in both ends, I'll get lights in these, in the end windows and in here, and I'll miss them in here, but that's the way it goes. So let's move on. The decoder that I'm going to use is a Digitrax. Somewhere in here it'll say it's an SDN144K0A. I've installed this in a few others. Yeah, the more of these you install, the better you get at it. So we'll pull this out. Again, let's get these staples, make sure we know where they are, which is in the garbage. Instructions. If you haven't done it before, read the instructions, then read the instructions, then read the instructions, then follow the guide online, then read the instructions. You just plan out in advance what you're going to do. I've done enough of these now. Well, this is my third one, I guess. But I've done enough that I kind of know what I'm going to do, so it's not so bad. But if you don't know what you're going to do, make sure you plan this out. This comes with a little bit of capped-on tape. You can see it on here. I prefer to use my own capped-on tape. I find that when this has been on for a while, it's less sticky, and I want it good and sticky. But I'll pull this off because it's not needed. On the top here, what this capped-on tape is used for, I'll show you shortly. And then I just stick it on my board. You can see off to the side here I have strips of capped-on tape. So when I need them, I just take my X-Acto knife, slice off a little bit, and then wrap it wherever I need it. So that's the decoder. Now, and this is where it's going to go. This is the capacitor. It goes in there like that, and I'll show you how we do some mods. This is the speaker. It's a 13mm speaker supplied, and it fits way down in. You either have to make something to hold that speaker up along the rim here, or, as I have done, for a little bit better sound, and I've tried both, so I know this is a little bit better sound, but probably not discernible. I've picked up some 16mm speakers, and these are 2-pack for $10, so $5 a speaker. There's no wires. They do come inside of a little sound baffle here, but that's not a, I guess you could cut it off or something, but it's not something that I plan to use because I'm going to use that as a sound baffle. So all I need to do now is just flip one of these out, and that's now out. Put that back aside for the next conversion that I'm going to do. And as you can see, this will just fit right in here nicely. And all you need to do is figure out how to adhere it in here, and I have some double-sided tape that I use for that. So on this, as I say, we are going to keep this rear light. I may have to shorten it, don't know yet. I need to shorten these wires, and I need to cut this speaker off, but have these wires just the right length so that they'll go back to the speaker here. So step one is to reload the components back into the body here. And we'll grab them from here, from my little box. There's the motor in its plastic mount. Here's a couple of clips. There's one of the little worm gears. There's another one. There's an end bushing. There's another end bushing. There's a universal. There's a universal. Here's a little gray cap that holds the motor contacts down, but as you'll see, I'm going to end up soldering those anyway because I, after watching a few videos, don't trust them. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the worm gears going. One of the things I do, and I don't know, it's just a habit I got into, so over time I don't know whether this is a good thing or bad thing, but I'm going to go in here with this extra fine ultra light oil and put a drop there and a drop there. And so where that is just in where the flywheels connect into the motor. So there's a little tiny bit there. Then the next spot I'm going to put it on is right here in between this bushing and the worm gear. And again, it's just enough to get some oil in there. Now this is a hard spot to get it in, so I got more in there than I want, which means I get my little piece there, wipe off the excess, put another drop on the outside here, get this bushing on, spin them around a few times, put the dog bone on, put this into one end. Different ways of assembling these, but I found that if I put these in first, then drop the whole assembly in, it's way easier than any other method that I've tried. Other methods I've tried is to put the motor in first, and I find if I put the motor in first, then it's hard to get these in, and it's just a whole bunch easier to do it all at once like this and make sure everything's lined up. Goes on there. Get this dog bone in. Didn't fit in exactly how I want it. There, okay, that's in. Do that. Thing I forgot to do is where this plastic is on the motor mount, there's a little tab here that sticks out and I want to remove. It's just from the casting, so I'll take my nippers and just nip that out, make sure it doesn't get into the motor. So that's got that cleaned out. Go in with tweezers and make sure. I just didn't want it catching on the motor at all. Okay, dog bones back in, back in. It's pretty straightforward on how to assemble this. Can only go in one way, You see here there's tabs here, line up with tabs there. So that's the way this is all going to fit in. And yeah, you kind of have to play with it a little bit. Now that you're this close, you'll line up these little bushings so they go into their appropriate slots in both ends. And then it all just drops in nicely. Press down on it a little, spin the little brass weights, make sure everything's spinning okay, looking good. These plastic clips just slide on, one on each end. There is no front, back, left, right, anything else. They just slide in like that. And their use will become more apparent later. Now, I know I'm going to have to detach this capacitor and shorten the length of it. So what I'm going to do here is bring in my helper and put some cardboard around the circuit board so the little helper jaws don't screw up anything. Put my oil aside for now. Grab my soldering iron, nice clean tip. I'll gush it a little, clean it some more. Go back and try this again. There we go. Is that one done? And that one done. So now we got the front done. We need to measure the rear for size. So take this out. Yeah, I know I could have done this earlier, but I didn't. It's going to go like that. Rear speaker is going to go like this. Now, how confident are you in your soldering skills? Because if you're super confident, you can cut it right off to exactly the length you want. If you're like me and you're concerned between your soldering and stripping skills that you might make an oops, then you'll want to leave a little bit of room here. So you can see when this goes on here, like that, those wires are long enough to go to there and have a little bit left over. Now, as far as this light goes, it can't go back that far because it's in the way of the speaker. It has to stop right about there. So I need the length from the tip to where it gets soldered in to be about that long. So I'm going to have to cut it off about there. So first of all, I'll desolder it. So let's see if I can do this in a manner that people can still see. Okay, so we just touch, there's one off and two off. Okay, now I gotta remember which side is which. And at this point I know which side is which, this here side, which I'm just going to, so I don't forget in all of my cutting and stuff, I am going to take and mark with a black Sharpie, because that's the side that's going to go towards me. There, now get them screwed up. Get them screwed up, they won't work. Now let's go back and remeasure this to figure out light length. Because I think I want the light just to go like that. In fact, the shorter the better. I could even do it right over the motor, except it's covered, so we'll do it about like that, I think. There's the back. Okay, so we're going to do it partway through that black. Okay, well, both the same size. Now we'll get some more black on here because I don't want to screw them up. Now one last check to make sure that's going to work okay. Like that. Yep. Okay. Now I'll solder that puppy back in. My buddy in here to help. And the tweezers that I want are some soap. Yeah, I think we're successful on that one as well. Okay, hopefully there's, yeah, everything's attached okay. Hopefully I didn't get too much heat on it, otherwise it won't work. Now that I have all that done, the next step I'm going to solder the speaker. I like to take it out to solder it. So we'll move that aside, we'll put the speaker there. Step one in soldering the speaker is I got to get these wires tinned. And in order to tin them, I first have to strip them, and I've tried all sorts of things, and the most recent that I've been using is just taking an X-Acto knife, pressing down on a piece of wood, and pulling, and we'll rotate it a bit more. Until what you're left with is just that tiny little bit in there of wire. That's all I want. That will, in fact, when I tin it, see, that's what happens. You press too hard, and you cut the wire. Which is why we made them a little bit longer than we need them to be. Just about, there it is. A little bit again. Put that aside. Other than, we're going to have to do the same thing with our capacitor buddy here. So let's measure that out so we can do the same thing. Capacitor fits in there like that. Board will fit on like that. Wire has to reach back to the wire point there, plus a little bit more. And in fact, when the wires go in, they have to go in this way. Although I guess in the PB unit we won't have to do that. But in the PA unit you'd pretty much have to bring them up for clearance purposes. So if we just do this, figure out that the wires, as long as they're about that long, going to be fine. Cut them off. Put the little pieces of wire away. By the way, a lot of this stuff that I do things a bit different, but Mike Pfeiffer has some YouTube videos, and on those YouTube videos he goes through these installations, except his are non-sound, which is his preference. I like to sound decode all of mine unless there's a reason not to. So if I'm going to consist something all the time, like a PB unit, I may not consist it, although in this case I have. So as mentioned, this B unit is, although it's going to generally run in a consist, is still okay set up. So in order to tin these, all I do is get a little flux on each of the little bit of wire that's coming through. We'll do the same thing for the capacitor. And then I'll get my solder here, and I just have it sitting there sticking up like that. Then what I can do with a clean soldering iron, and again I just dip it in the flux, it cleans it. I want to get some solder on the very end, and then just touch that to where I've fluxed. That will tin it. And with the solder that I grab and put on, it'll just add enough to tin that guy. So that's done. Some more solder on for this one. Okay, so those are well tinned. So now we've got this pretty much ready to go in. The next thing that I'm going to have to do though is I'm going to have to get the speaker fixed in. And I've been trying a couple of different methods. The method that I dislike is now I have to bend this the opposite way. This is thick enough that I can put it against the side here and then overlap it to the top, because the top is where it has to be. Okay, there you can see, I had to go over the camera, the back there, but you can see on the side looking at it, it looks pretty uneven around there, but that'll all press down with the speaker. Move this out of the way. That these little guys are in fact a little longer than I'd like, so I'm going to knit them so that they're just the length I like. So that's better, because when they attach to the board here, they are going to just attach to that pad and that pad, except that's backwards. I know that red's always towards me on this guy. So they're going to attach to those two pads. And I can now solder the speaker on. I'll put the capacitor where it's going to go. Speaker will get soldered on, wire will get soldered in there like that. Again, these wires are too long for the speaker as well, so I'm going to just nip them. Then get all of those little pieces of wire, throw them in the garbage, make sure they're not here. I don't want them stuck in the speaker or something. There, so that works much better now. I have just the tiniest bit that's going to go in here. There's that one. And then for this one, basically the same thing. Except I'm going to hold it with a pair of tweezers because I don't want it to suddenly heat up halfway through and burn my fingers, and then I have to let go. There we go. So now we got this ready to go in. Back a little farther. So we got everything ready to go in here. The last thing that we need to do is grab the contact strips. Now remember that Kapton tape that came earlier? Its purpose is to wrap around here to insulate from these motor mounts, or the motor contacts. And I've in here indicated where I want the Kapton tape. I've indicated it's right, and that's the back side. So I've kind of over labeled it. So we'll put this in. And it needs to kind of angle down right there. Okay, that's the right one. Now what you wouldn't be able to see is the Kapton tape wraps around here, and then I put it forward and then cut it off along there. So it's important that this goes against here to eliminate any contact. If I reverse them and this went, there's a chance there could be contact. I don't want to take this apart to redo it. I'd rather just do stuff once. Okay, so that's all in nice. Now we'll take these two wires, put them up through where the light is, put the whole thing together here. There's a little gray tab that is hard to see, but it's right here. This whole unit slides back underneath that tab. See, I have my light in there. And this guy is just going to fit right in there. And now it is gushed in place. And these wires, I'm just going to flip up like that. Don't want it on top. Now that I have that, I'll move it forward, lift it up a little bit, tuck these wires underneath. Underneath and forward. I want to leave enough room for the light to be able to go down as far as it wants. There, I think that's pretty good. Seems good there. Okay. Now the next step is to apply a little bit of flux on these motor mounts and to solder the motor mounts down. The negative of doing this is it means that if you need to take this apart, it's a bit more of a pain. But the advantage of it is you're always going to have contact. So in order to do this, these have to go back down again using a toothpick. I'm trying, this is a new process, somebody had mentioned it, because what it does is it says, I'm not going to carry any heat forward, and I should still be able to hold things in place. Okay, that's quite springy. So that's now held down. I'm going to get a little solder on the end of my soldering iron here. Hold that in place. Touch it on. A little more solder than I got. There we go, that's exactly how I want it. Now flip this around so I can do the other side. With my super sophisticated hold down tool here. Grab solder in the soldering iron. Grab flux on the soldering iron. Way too much. But it's certainly in place. For some reason I had to put more solder on than I wanted. Anyway, I'm not going to try and play around with it because it's just going to be annoying if I do. Next step. Get these wires back on again. Capacitor. There we go. And there we go. This here is the default little pin that holds these guys down. It fits. And then we put the trucks back in. Now, normally I'd go through a bit more testing, but having done this a few times, I'm pretty confident. Having said that, I'm probably going to get bit by something this go around. It seems to be making contact there. The last thing, of course, will be to put the shell back on. Forward, backward. I think that's the back. So let's make sure the shell fits with what we've done. And I look and shell fits perfectly. Let's go over to the layout and see how it works. Okay, there, over there on your left hand side you can see the B unit. I've just been running DC on this track because I've been doing some local break-in. In order to change it to AC, what I do is I take this plug, this here goes to the track, and I plug it into my DCC system. So that's the DCC system. Take any of the 1, 2, 3, 4 ports, because the other one's a programming port, and I now have DCC on my layout. And you can see there's that B unit sitting down there. And we'll now, you can see there's a light, and you should be able to hear sound. And away we go. Okay, now you can see in the front there, there's a light in there. If I go to reverse, ooh, there's a light there. Let me go forward a little further so I can see what that looks like coming back. Okay, so nothing there. Go to reverse. And nope, it's blocked by the speaker. So all we get in reverse are those two little porthole lights. But that's not too bad. Now, bell. Crossing. Coupler. Well, no, I guess that's blow off. Something else. Okay, let's do a run around the track. Okay, that's not so prototype coming back. There we go. So, another successful DCC conversion. Oh, sound off. See what it sounds like. That. So, the engine sound isn't great, and I have to adjust volumes for that. This decoder lets me do that. So, sound back on now. More apparent at slower speeds. Engine sound. No engine sound. No engine sound. Engine sound. So running at more prototypical speeds, it sounds a lot better. Thanks for watching.